Hi, welcome to another video. This week we're going to be procrastinating because I don't want to do my accounts. So I'm going to make a salt soap. Salt soaps are a little bit different from your normal cold process soap because they set up really quick. So you need to unmold them within 15 minutes to an hour depending what oils you use. So what we're going to do is use some normal cavity moulds instead so that we don't have to cut it, because if you leave it too long you can break all of the wires on your wire cutter, and I don't really want to do that and have to restring it. We're just using coconut oil for this. Well, coconut oil, a little bit of olive oil and a tiny bit of castor oil. You could use completely coconut oil if you wanted. And then we're going to add our sodium hydroxide water lye solution as normal, and we'll take that to trace. And we want it thick enough that the soap isn't going to allow the salt to sink, because if it's too thin all the salt will just sink to the bottom. So we need it reasonably thick before we pour. The salt I'm going to use is Himalayan pink salt, because that has various benefits to it, and I thought it was just a bit prettier than normal salt. The reason we do salt soap is because it lasts a really long time. It makes a really hard bar, and it's also, you get sort of instant gratification because it's sort of ready to unmold a bit quicker, although you do still have to do a cure, and in some cases it will lose all its water weight after about 4 to 6 weeks. But you will get a better lather the longer you leave it. Some people let them cure for up to 6 months to a year. So it's up to you. Keep weighing it every week and see how it does. But yeah, they're really good fun to make, so let's make one now. So here's my oils all melted. This is a mixture of mostly coconut oil with a bit of olive oil and some castor oil, and I just melted that down. It doesn't take long because the coconut oil is practically melted in these temperatures anyway. And then we just waited for it to cool along with the lye solution that I made. The lye solution is simply distilled water and sodium hydroxide. I haven't added any sugar or citric or anything like that to it. It's just a basic lye solution. So now I'm just going to add the colour to the oils, just so I can make sure it's thoroughly dispersed before I add anything else. This is a mixture of I think it was cool pink and clementine orange from the soapery, because I'm using a peach fragrance in this soap, so I wanted a kind of pinky orange colour. Whether it works or not, we'll see. But we're going to mix that up and make that all nice and dispersed. And then I'm going to add my fragrance oil straight into the oils. I'm just doing this because I can't remember how it behaves, and this just gives me the better chance of it doing what I want it to. So I'll add that and mix that in, just so that's really well dispersed within the oils. And then we're going to add our lye, just like we would do with a regular loaf of soap that we were making. We want to bring this to a medium trace, because if we don't, what could happen is the salt could sink and not be evenly dispersed within the soap batter. What I forgot to mention earlier as well is when making salt soap, especially with coconut oil, we have a very high superfat. So the superfat is the extra oil in the soap that doesn't get saponified, and for a salt soap like this you want probably between about 15 and 20% superfat, and that's just so it can be cleansing, lathering, and also be very moisturising and not too drying once you've got the final bar cured. Soap bars do generally last longer because the salt prohibits the solubility of the soap, and also it'll sort of act as a chelating agent, so you won't get so much soap scum when you're using the soap as well. Salt bars tend to be more lathery than bubbly, and the longer that you let them cure, the more lathery they will be. They're also quite creamy. I wouldn't use them if you have sensitive skin or if you have cuts or grazes, because of the salt content it could sting. Try not to use salts with high mineral content. The larger salt crystals tend to be those kind of things, just because they can apparently cause issues with saponification. I've just read this, I haven't tried this myself, so you can obviously do your own experiments. It's also best to do a single colour or maybe just two, because it can be hard to do intricate designs just because of how fast it cures. It does harden very, very fast, so you're better off moulding in individual moulds than one big mould, because as I mentioned earlier, it can break the strings of your soap cutter and be very hard to cut through if you leave it too long. So I think this is about right in terms of trace. It's just thick enough and not too thin that it'll sink. So we're going to get our Himalayan pink salt and add that now, and then just stir that in by hand. You can use a stick blender if you want, but I prefer just to stir it by hand because you can feel whether it's still on the bottom and the sides of the container and get it really well dispersed that way. And then we're ready to pour. This is just a bit of a test batch because I'm testing a fragrance, which is why these are just random moulds and won't look too pretty. And yes, I am going to clean these up in a minute. But you can see that there's no big lumps of salt in there. It's all really well dispersed, and the sort of viscosity of our batter, that's about perfect for pouring salt bars. So yeah, just fill your moulds, and then these will be really easy to unmould in about 15 minutes to half an hour, possibly a little bit longer, but just keep checking it. 15 minutes, just tap the side just to see how solid they are. And you will need gloves when you start unmoulding, because obviously this isn't fully saponified, it's just hardening. And here we go. This was a pretty warm day, so it took a little while, but this is about 45 minutes later, and they're perfectly easy to unmould. Some of them are a little soft, so you do have to be careful with corners and things, but if you were doing a loaf and using a soap cutter, this would be the perfect time to cut it because it is soft enough to do so, and then you can just clean around the edges of your soap bars. But I'm quite pleased with these. The colours come out nice. So far, the fragrance has behaved itself really, really well. So we'll see how these go once we've unmoulded them, and then we'll let these cure and weigh them every week until the water weight is all lost. So the weight will remain the same for 1 or 2 weeks, and then I'll consider them cured, and I'll start testing the bars, and I'll test them over the weeks and months to see how the lather improves the longer that they cure. And that's kind of how I do stability on soap, especially salt soaps, because there are some people that swear by a year's cure. Here's me just testing out to show you how soft this is at this point. But yeah, apparently the lather gets better, and just the general cleansing and everything of the bar gets better the longer you leave these. So I'm going to do a bit of experimenting and see how that fares. But these are how the square bars came out. You can see they look really nice. And yeah, that's salt soap. It's really quite easy. It's quite a beginner friendly type of soap, I'd say, because it's a very basic recipe and very easy to do. So give it a go, tell me what you think. If you want the formula for this, as usual, it is on my Patreon, so you can go and find that, where you'll have a printable PDF. I've also at this point got over 50 other exclusive formulas that are only for patrons on there, and I've got all of the formulas to everything on my YouTube channel as well, so go and check that out, and I will catch you in the next one. And thanks very much to my patrons who are listed here.